Okay, good morning everyone. It's always a pleasure to be back in Tokyo and at the club. I'm going to do today something I usually don't do. That is read out my preliminary remarks, because thanks to the technology, the message is going to be circular across the world. We will look for that. And the message, I must humbly say, is quite important, because in fact there's been very few voice raised in favor or in support of Carlos Ghosn, even less so in France, one of his home countries, than in Japan, where he's in the situation we all know. Contrary to what my good old friend Andrew said last year here, in a different occasion, I've never been the voice of Carlos Ghosn. But since he has been effectively silenced until now by the intimidation coming from the Tokyo Public Prosecutor Office, I do have a few things to say in support of him. Besides, as with other issues in economics, my forte, I assume to be a contrarian. And then there's another thing I would add, is that I understand, or I've been told, that some people do not realize that I've left AFP. I resigned from AFP more than 10 years ago. So what I could say or write about the case do not reflect in any way the views, well, that's going to be even more difficult, the views of the wire service. Now, be forwarded that I will not shy away from some touchy question, touchy particularly here in Japan. For instance, has been Carlos Ghosn discriminated against by the Japanese judicial system? Short answer, yes, certainly, among his peers at the top of the business world. On the other hand, Mr. Hiroto Saikawa, the current head of Nissan, has been certainly discriminated favorably and in a very big way, and we can come back to that. Second, what is fair to assimilate the case to a Moscow or Prague Stalinist show trial, as I did in the FT op-ed piece I wrote? Short answer, absolutely yes, and I stick to it. Thirdly, can Carlos Ghosn expect a fair trial in Japan? Well, my answer to that question is another question. Why would he? And by the way, I've had circulated, I think, a flyer about a symposium I'm going to taking part this Saturday in Tokyo. It's all in Japanese, organized by the largest lawyer association in Japan about the so-called hostage justice system. And the other speaker will be Mr. Takano, one of Carlos Ghosn's lawyers. And you're all welcome. And the media is absolutely welcome to attend this, this symposium. It's on Saturday afternoon. Another point. What sort of role exactly has the French government played as Renault major and rather invasive shareholder in the unraveling of the alliance? I would say nefarious, as usual. There is in the case a very big personal responsibility of the current President of the Republic of France, because the whole story started back in 2014 and 15 when he was the economy minister in the François Hollande administration, and sought to re-establish the state, the French government authority over Renault, and that started to worry, and rightly so, the Japanese side. Besides, as we know, we learn more and more about what went out since basically the spring of last year. We see a deep involvement of French officials in the whole proceeding, starting, I think, with a key visit that took place in April 2018, when Mr. Martin Vial, who is the administrator of a very, very large public sector, including, of course, Renault, came to visit Tokyo and had a personal encounter with Mr. Arinada, who we all know played a key role in the whole conspiracy. One can conclude the French government, for reasons we could discuss later, in fact gave the green light to the judicial elimination of Carlos Ghosn. And now, and in the coming months and years, the price will be paid by Renault. Finally, was the Japanese government so closely linked to Nissan's history from the very beginning, aware or even involved in the palace coup set up by the old Nissan gang, now in control of the company? Well, that's a question that remains open, and I think the Tokyo-based media, Japanese and foreign, should try to sort out. But then I would like to briefly look at the Nissan scandal from a larger perspective. First, as two countries deeply hostile, that's the case of France, or reluctant, the case of Japan, to embrace globalization. France and Japan have been really unlikely bedfellows in the alliance. That goal, more than anybody else, made it work for 20 years, remains a unique performance. Neither in France nor in Japan, Ghosn, that I call one le métèque in the ancient Greece acception of the word. For those not familiar, a métèque in Athens was a foreigner, that is, a citizen of another Greek country, enjoying certain rights to do business, for instance, but could not become a proper citizen, allowed to go to the agora to take decision on the way of life of the city. And Ghosn never made any effort, maybe it was a mistake, to join the local nomenclatura, either in France or in Japan. Two countries where the nomenclatura is extremely well entrenched and powerful. Besides, before joining Renault in 1996, people should remember that he grew up as an industry leader at the Michelin tire company. And Michelin is renowned to be a fiercely independent company, which keeps politicians and their small world at arm's length. Now, and we can witness that almost every day, with Ghosn gone, it looks like we are back to the good old day of the Régie Nationale des Usines Renault, when it was a state-owned company, and the political power was ultimately in charge. very briefly, if we had time, I know it's a concern for many, many people here and in France. Even more, I could give a lecture on contemporary monetary policy, because, by the way, that's my forte. And the general debasement of currencies, the main reason why the paycheck of top managers, like so many other things, think of real estate, for instance, have been inflated to insane levels in many, many places. My favorite case is the soccer player, Brazilian soccer player called Neymar. The guy was purchased for 220 million euros by Paris Saint-Germain, it's Qatari money, and has spent the last 3 years hardly playing any game. He's either injured or recuperating from injury in his home country, Brazil, and now wants to leave to go back to Barcelona. Of course, Paris Saint-Germain will not let him go without getting the money back. Incidentally, I checked recently, I discovered that the compensation for Didier Leroy, the number 2 at Toyota Motor Company, last year topped 1 billion a year. That is 3 times Akio's Toyota own package. So there is actually a market for top-level managers. There might not be a market for the Hiroto Saikawas of the world. That's a point to make. Another interesting point is the so-called imbalance within the alliance between Renault and Nissan. Fair enough. Even when Louis Schweitzer thought about the formation of the alliance and taking basically control of Nissan, Nissan was bigger than Renault, always has been. I remember Louis Schweitzer telling me at the time that the window of opportunity he used to close the operation were the 3 months during which the Renault stocks had more value than the Nissan stock. So it's really nothing new. But what is the imbalance coming from right now? Basically from what Ghosn achieved for Nissan. An example, he directed the negotiation on the Dongfeng joint venture for Nissan with Chinese Premier Zhu Rongji. And he personally rescued the negotiation to take over Siam Motor in Thailand, being mismanaged by his Nissan subordinates. And there is other case, of course. Now those 2 companies, Dongfeng and Siam Motor, produced last year 2.4 of the 5.6 million units that Nissan counts as Nissan's produced vehicles, and have provided virtually all the net growth in sales of Nissan over the past decade. So the imbalance is really the result of the good job that Carlos Ghosn did for the Nissan Motor Company. Another point that I'd like to single out, but I think it's a long-term perspective that we should always keep in mind, not being driven only by the day-to-day reporting. It's not by accident that the auto industry is called the industry of industries, because it doesn't deal only with materials of machines, because it's not only a huge industry involving millions of workers, hundreds of millions of clients, but because it's also built up on emotion and even passion. I mean, you have still people in this world, I don't know how it's going to last, that have passion for cars. And not only men's. Well, that's a remark I should retract, sorry. And the motor industry, that very peculiar industry, has not been built over the ages by the Hiroto Saikawa of the world, even in Japan. Think of Eiji Toyoda, that if my memory is correct, was nicknamed the Emperor, and for good reason. Or the inflexible, domineering, and visionary Shoichiro Honda, the founder of Honda. Or again, my favorite example, Taiichi Ohno, the father of the so-called machine that changed the world of MIT fame, an authoritarian and often ill-tempered leader. So much for the so-called Japanese-style consensus. By the way, it's largely a fiction. That now seems to inspire Mr. Jean-Baptiste Sénard, the man the French government handpicked to replace Carlos Ghosn and his alleged dictatorial power. If Nissan Motor was such a mess in 1999, it was largely because a weak management could not drive a fractious company. Thirdly, that's not the end, but quite close. As in any major event, we journalists cannot avoid questioning the performance of the media. I found it, from the very beginning, rather ironical that the Japanese mainstream media, especially the TV networks, that created in the first place the semi-god-like figure of Ghosn after he turned around Nissan, embarked almost immediately from November 19 last year in a campaign of character assassination, orchestrated by the sinister alliance, a very strong one, alliance, I repeat, between the old Nissan gang and the Tokyo Public Prosecutor Office. Just my own experience. I gave twice a 1-hour interview to both TBS and NHK. The NHK team traveled all the way to Lisbon, where I live. What resulted from the interview was, in both cases, 30 seconds. A simple reason, you will say, well, that's TV. No, very simple reason. They could not leverage any words against Carlos Ghosn. That was not fitting in their campaign. Secondly, the description of the greedy foreign boss we are now getting on an almost daily basis, who himself nor his children that were raised the 4 children were raised in Japan, never loved Japan, like Saikawa once said in a shameless attempt to play up the nationalist card. This image opposed to the virtuous and frugal Japanese business executive, it's a joke. We all know this, and it's a bad one. Thirdly, fed at times by daily leaks. Actually, we used to, between us, the few people working in group about the case, used to call that the daily leak, and we expected one every morning. The coverage of the case here and elsewhere has looked largely biased in favor of the accusation. In part, of course, because the defense has yet today to remain silent for one major reason. They don't have actually access to any factual evidence, that is documents, that supposedly sustain the accusation. By the way, it is not better in France, where the Renault management, the new management, is now actively engaged as well in the campaign to collect dirt on Ghosn, that's their motto, as the case of the so-called alleged Mazar report demonstrates, and if I can, I will do a few things about it in the Q&A session. And finally, this is very strange to observe that while Nissan is leaking, or has been leaking for months, dirt on Ghosn, because it's exactly what it is, none of the accusers is available for any interview or is answering any question. What you have at Nissan is a sort of human robot, I forgot his name, I know the English name, there should be a Japanese one, I suppose, that parrots the same empty words after each leaked revelation. Nissan do not comment on ongoing judiciary investigation. That's it. In fact, and that was the first thing I did when I heard of the news on November 19th, the whole kabuki started with Sakawa's initial press conference, where he, after launching all those investigations, he refused to answer any specific question. And of course, the staging of the Ghosn arrest for TV Asahi. As we now all know, Ghosn was not in the plane when he was arrested. Finally, looking ahead briefly. As of today, about $16 billion shareholders' value at Nissan and Renault combined has evaporated since November 19, and I can tell you it's only the beginning. The status of the alliance, which comprised 8 large companies, not 3, not only Nissan, not only Renault, not only Mitsubishi, but as I said, Dongfeng, Avtovaz, Siam, Samsung, Dacia, was over time unsustainable. To look at the financial structuring of the alliance is a job some people know much better than I do, that Ghosn started in 2005. One big reason he could not move ahead was the presence of the French state in the Renault capital. It was not sustainable. It's like riding a bicycle. If you stop pedaling, you just fall down. Second point in this, looking ahead, Nissan's expenses in the hunt for dirt on Ghosn are suspected of running into the hundreds of millions of dollars. I can provide details. When what is at stake with Carlos Ghosn alleged misdeeds would be around 30 million, if guilty. And of course, that's a big if, as he continues to deny and strenuously each and every accusation. Fourth, during the coming upheaval in the global motor industry, who is now facing the biggest change since his birth in the late 19th century, we can be sure that we will see many companies falter. And the members of the unraveling alliance do not look to me like long-term survivors. And by the way, the condition accepted by the current manager to sell Renault to the Agnelli family do not bode well. We should go back to that in the discussion, if possible. And finally, as we all know, mergers of equal, the word that Jürgen Schwenk used for the failed merger between Daimler and Chrysler, are as real as flying pigs. And the final word would be in memory of a great car guy who passed away last week, Lee Iacocca. In his memoir, published in 1984, humbly titled Iacocca, the man who passed away last week envisioned And to my recollection, it was really the first time a global motor company operating on equal basis in what were at the time the three dominant automobile markets, the US, Europe, and Japan. There was no China back in the early 80s. At the Renault-Nissan Alliance, that vision of a global motor company was taking shape. I believe it's over now. Thank you for your attention.